thanks everybody for being here. Excited for this one. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Zan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Zan. As Jesse said, I'm with the Association for Regenerative Culture, and I am located in the Southeast Texas, Houston metropolitan area. I work with Lee, and I want to add we have a co-sponsor on this initiative. We don't want to forget to mention We Regenerate. Corrine Brennan, who's with us, is with We Regenerate, so she'll talk a little bit about that. So my job here is to introduce Lee. Lee Barnes, who's my colleague at the Association for Regenerative Culture, and he's going to get us started with his vision for our gathering and his inspiration for it. Lee Barnes is president and founder of ARC and a passionate advocate for permaculture and environmental sustainability generally. He has a background in environmental horticulture, and he's dedicated over 3 decades to educating and empowering people to embrace regenerative practices for seed collection, organizes numerous permaculture and seed sharing events and trainings, and he is an amazing water wizard. So without further ado, I'm turning it over to you, Lee. And Corinne, you'll show his slides, right?
I'm Lee Barnes, and I guess I'm part of the reason we're gathered here. I sort of had an epiphany. I'm in Waynesville, North Carolina, just west of Asheville, about 25 miles. So I was on the edge of all the damage with Helene, but I know the entire area from backpacking and traveling in real estate. And I know these places. I know barns that have been washed out. I know people that have been washed out. So it's very emotional to me that we design a better future so this doesn't have to happen again. I don't want to spend a lot of time on pictures today, but I'll point out that this is a very big storm, way more than people realize. I'd almost ask for a show of hands how many people were directly impacted by Helene. If they're seeing the damage in the Asheville area, you've got to see it to believe it. So let me have a couple slides real quick, and then we'll keep this moving. So really, Helene was like 7 disasters. I think I've got that right. It was 110 days ago. And I'll show you a map basically of its route and when I lost internet and cell phone. So just the idea, I've been in permaculture for 30 years, and it's time we make a bigger impression on people. And this is incredible tragedy, but it's a great opportunity for us to help people do better designing and to promote permaculture jobs. Next slide. This sort of explains it to me. That dark area is the power out as Helene came through. So it's a vast area, bigger than the state of Massachusetts. Next slide. This is a 3-day summary, so you can see the bright orange is where the eastern front of the ridge of the Blue Ridge got impacted the most with wind and water. I've seen recordings of 30 inches over the whole period. Next. And this is just the one that says Friday AM. If you look at that little pointer, that's just below the down one where it says TS. It's turned into a tropical storm at this point. But anyway, that's when, we started losing weird stuff. Next slide. So just as kind of a summary, huge area impacted. Best I can tell, this is the biggest storm of its sort area-wise. Hundreds of thousands of acres were damaged from little to lot. Over almost 2,000 landslides, 1,000 bridges destroyed, roads impacted, blah, blah, blah. The bottom line, a recent estimate by Associated Press that Helene will have a cost of 225 to 250 billion. And they're comparing that to LA right now, which is estimated 135 to 150 billion. So, this is a big storm. We didn't, I think I've heard around 122 people killed in all states, 103 in North Carolina. Next. This is just to kind of put in framework where we're at. I think we're still in the honeymoon, heroic, incredible community action. And that's the thing, that this whole opportunity is going to build more community. But, it's going to be an up and down road. So be realizing that. But reconstruction, let's reconstruct with permaculture design in mind, and especially redundancy in communication. Next slide. I'm sure I'm running out of time. Just to show that, we're ragged mountain ridge to the bottom, bottom left. You can kind of see the Smokies Asheville. Next slide. These are the watersheds. We're a little different. Usually bioregions are defined by a single or major watershed. This is approximately 20 of them that are in the Southern Appalachians. And you can see in the middle was the French Broad, which took out pretty much Asheville and downstream. And then the Nolichucky took out Irwin, Tennessee. So next slide.
I think you're out of slides, my friend.
Okay, well, I went through them. So, but I had a lot more pictures of just damage. But the damage you see on a video is different than when you're driving the road and you're looking down one lane to a 30 to 50 foot drop. So, so we have an opportunity. We're in a short guide that we can put online as a download, and then a greater repository of information. So how you can contribute to that is look what we've got, see what we're missing, and help us do a better design of this thing. I ultimately see this should turn into jobs, permaculture designers, restorers, all sorts of things. So that's me for now.
Let me jump in then. So just a brief overview of the town hall and what to expect. We're going to have a presentation for about 10 minutes, starting with Charles and Chris. They're both going to talk about what they do. They have separate courses on this with EAT, Earth Activist Training. You guys can check them out. But they're going to combine, give us a 10-minute sort of like overview of that work and disaster. And then Zan has a couple prompts, and we'll go into breakout rooms with individuals talking to individuals about what we just learned for about 10 minutes. We'll come back from that. We'll put our summaries in the chat just to keep things so we'll have a record of things and we can sift out relevant information. I'll read those, and then we'll go into Zan and Kareen giving an overview of the work that's been done so far since this group has sort of started really about 3 or 4 months ago. So we're going to get an overview and also how you might contribute or how you might stay abreast of what's going on. And then we'll have another breakout room and do the same thing again, and that'll be it. Did I miss anything, Zan?
I don't think so. So, and the goal of both the breakout rooms is not just talking, although the community piece is important in getting to know one another. However, those are both opportunities for all of you to contribute to this initiative. So we think of this as opportunities for a bunch of designers to co-create. So just to put a little bit more context on that. And I think we'll go ahead and introduce our presenters.
Yeah, I might step in and just make an executive decision to truncate these introductions for Charles and Chris, because they're both on a limited time frame. They're gracious enough to be here and to introduce these topics to us, but they might have to go. So let me just keep it short and sweet. Needless to say, these guys have a great bio that's much deeper than what I'm about to read. But starting with Charles Williams. Charles is a longtime permaculture educator and certified designer, and he works with Earth Activist Training, and he'll maybe talk about the program that he does with Earth Activist Training in disaster. Charles is great. He's a deep friend of PINA, and we're very appreciative of Charles. Chris Gilmore teaches emergency and disaster planning with EAT. Chris is a student and teacher of ecology, survival, self-reliance, and the relationship between nature and human potential. And it's great to get to know you, Chris. Thanks again for being here. And just without further ado, I'll hand it over to you guys. Take us down the rabbit hole, teach us, share with us, please. Thank you.
Oh, you're muted, Charles.
Hello.
That's that's the ritual in Zoom. You always start off with you're muted, then you unmute. It's kind of how we know that we're together. So my name is Charles. I'm unmuted. I'm with Earth Activist Training. And I guess what I'm going to say this morning is Earth Activist Training, what we realize is that disasters and crises and emergencies have been happening. They're becoming more common, and we need to get ready. And it kind of starts with environmental disasters, floods and fires and hurricanes and tornadoes. But crises and disasters are more than that. We have emergencies that come from many fronts that aren't just environmental. We've got war, we've got conflict, we have just emergencies in your neighborhood. So emergencies and disasters and crisis, you can kind of roll them together, and we need a design for them. We need to get ready for them. And as these environmental disasters have been more frequent, we're designing more programs to help people learn what to do. And when we talk about disaster, you have to remember it's not an event in just a point. You have a flood, it goes at this point. There's a preparation stage where you're getting ready. Like, how do we prepare for what might come? And like, how do we start to learn about what our tools are? Because preparation makes a huge difference. You have the response moment. You're responding to something happening now. You have the cleanup and remediation. That afterwards, how do people come back to their homes? How do we clean up the toxins? How do we, rebuild? And so it's actually very long. And I think Lee had a great slide that kind of it spreads out. It's not a moment. It is a longer process. So that's what we've been focusing on, is creating some programming to help walk people through how we think about this. And disasters aren't just an ecological design challenge. They're a social design challenge, right? How do we work together? How do we organize? How do we communicate? How are we in mutual aid with each other? Because even if we're not hit by a storm, if your house isn't the one that's hit by the flood or the hurricane, you might be a community next door. How are you an ally to that? How do you do mutual aid? Help people out in the moment, in preparation, in the moment of disaster, and help them return home. So that's what we've been focusing on, is designing a kind of suite of classes, some more kind of classic landscape design, some around group process, some that are really focused on disaster, and that's what Chris is going to talk about. So I encourage you to kind of take a look at some of the things we're offering and look at where your skill set is and what you can bring to any moment. We all have something to bring, and we all have things to learn, and we need to get started and prepared now. I'm going to put some things in the chat, some links for you all, but I'm going to pass it over to Chris because he has some great stuff to share.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Charles. Yeah, it's a real honor to be here, folks. I've been dreaming of this conversation for a decade, I think, and I was so stoked to find out about the conversation. It came together quite quickly. But yeah, super grateful to be here. Unfortunately, I do actually have to cut out early today because it was kind of short notice. So my apologies for that, but I hope to be more involved in some of the future conversations and the breakouts and whatnot. So I only have a few minutes here, so I'm going to be relatively quick here, but I want to give a little bit of context to the perspective I'm coming from, a little bit of background info, to share some of my thoughts on ways that we can bridge the best of modern emergency management with the permaculture world. And I have some thoughts around, how we can start integrating some of these solutions together. So a little bit of background on me. My permaculture background started a little over 20 years ago. I did an apprenticeship out on Seven Raven Farm under a guy named Michael Nichols. And around that same time, my wife took her first PDC, permaculture design course. So that was about 20 years ago. We've been running our own permaculture forest garden inspired homestead for about 15 years, kind of in Muskoka, Ontario. So kind of in a northern climate, a little south of the Boreal Forest, up in the granite country. And while I was working on the farm 20 years ago, I had a little bit of an epiphany around, I'm calling this sustainable and regenerative, but I know so little about the ecology that surrounds the farm. I know about the vegetables I want to grow, but I don't actually know a lot about the birds and the mammals and the wild plants, which has basically sent me on a lifelong journey as an ecologist. So I actually started off by going back to school, and my formal background's in forestry. So I have a background in forestry. I still actually do forestry consulting today for landowners. And a lot of it is around helping them actually prepare, think long-term, like in hundreds of years and how they manage their land, but also thinking about climate change and how we manage our land as well. So forestry and ecology was a big part of my background. Now, go back about 12, 14 years, I started getting really worried about where the world was going, and I decided to actually go back to school again and start taking classes in emergency and disaster management and kind of learning the best of modern day emergency management. Worked for a consulting firm for a number of years, a big international firm. So I've done some work with municipal governments, with some hospitals, utility corporations and stuff. And I actually left that world because there were some amazing tools there. I learned a lot. There's some amazing work being done, but I felt there were some huge holes. And I actually, my passion is really in the grassroots movements and the kind of stuff we're doing. So my current passion, if I can bring up the slide, and this is the part I think that might bring some pieces towards the future discussions, just sharing that for context. So let me just share here for a second. So I've been working on this concept I'm calling right now just kind of holistic emergency preparedness. And I've really come to realize that, some of the big things that modern emergency disaster management is actually missing is actually that knowledge, deep knowledge of ecology, the relationships with people, things like equity. The top-down approach in a tactical sense can be very practical when you got to put out a fire, but it's not necessarily the most regenerative perspective when we start thinking about design and how we build things back. And I realized that the permaculture movement, like the number of disasters I see that could be fixed through permaculture design, and the number of times, I would go in and work with a municipality, and I'm like, we could do so much to buffer this through permaculture. But the people I was working with their EM hats weren't even open to that. I mean, they'd never even heard of permaculture before. And the idea that nature connection could be rooted to that was also totally foreign. I can tell you in Ontario that there's one tree species that creates 80% of the blackouts in southern Ontario during wind and ice storms. And I guarantee you most of the urban designers in Toronto aren't aware how, choosing what species grow along our power lines could save blackouts, but also millions of dollars in the response to those kinds of things. So where I've been really going with my work is actually wanting to bridge like deep knowledge of ecology and nature with the best of permaculture, community development, and with community development, I think there's also the mental piece of this as well. There's the grief work, and processing the trauma of it. There's like, how do I actually function in a stressful situation? How do I truly step into my gift and feel empowered in a scenario that's kind of scary? So all of that's kind of encompassed in that community. And then, I sound like I'm bashing the world of emergency and disaster management, the modern, but I'm not at all. They have some phenomenal tools they've developed over the years and some really great frameworks. So something I've been working a lot on is kind of bridging some of the permaculture frameworks with emergency disaster preparedness. And I know there's not a lot of time to dive into it today, so I'm going to just share kind of 2 more slides and then I'll wrap up and we'll pass on. But I'll just say, if anyone wants to reach out to me after this, chris@chrisoutdoors.ca is my email for follow-up conversations. That's also my website, chris@chrisoutdoors.ca, but I also teach through Earth Activist Training. So for example, FEMA's disaster preparedness cycle, evaluate, plan, organize, train, exercise. This is used in modern emergency management. It overlaps beautifully with some of our permaculture principles: observe and interact, design from patterns into detail, integrate rather than segregate, creatively use and respond to change. The preparedness zones, I think about our zones in permaculture and the way we think of our zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when we plan a homestead or a permaculture project can be absolutely applied to how we think about disaster preparedness within a community. So I know that's a real short little intro to something that we could go quite deep on. As Charles mentioned, I'm actually teaching a 6-week course starting next week through Earth Activist Training, where this is going to be the focus, basically bridging those 2 worlds and help making plans. I'll finish by commenting on what Lee said, is that I think to kind of make this stuff more mainstream and have a bigger impact, actually getting people employed that understand the modern EM skills with the permaculture world, and then them going out and working for organizations, NGOs, getting into positions within the Red Cross, within municipal government. I feel like that's potentially a high leverage point. So I'm kind of really passionate right now around working with people that want to go out and infiltrate those spaces and bridge those worlds. And people that want to go on a nature connection journey and have a strong ecology background, permaculture background, but also use the best modern tactics that we have. So I'll kind of leave it there for now. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm so sorry that I have to duck out early. I've got a medical appointment this afternoon. Otherwise, I would love to stay around, but I will try my best to be on future calls. So I will leave it there.
Hey, Chris, that's amazing, man. You can't leave us hanging, though. What's the one tree that's responsible for 80% of the blackouts?
Oh, yeah. So Manitoba maple, sometimes called box elder. It's a very fast growing tree in this area, and the branches are terrible under wind and ice pressure, right?
Yeah.
If we were planting oaks or other species in there, it would make a world of difference. And
Beautiful.
interesting enough, Manitoba maple often takes over disturbed areas. So inevitably in urban landscapes, you have a lot of it. But that gives us a real potential from a design perspective to think about planting food. Oh, I'm going to say one more thing, food forests. I think they have a lot that they can offer in the future of climate change mitigation.
Amen. And you're in the right place for that, because I'm sure we all agree. Thank you so much, Chris. That was an amazing overview and very whetted all of our appetites, I'm sure. So I want to take your course, and I want to get deeper into what you've been thinking about. And it so relates to what we're doing here. So thanks for bringing it. I'll pass it over to you, Zan.
Thank you so much, Chris, as well. And also thank you both for being willing to do this at the totally last minute. We're so grateful for that. We're glad you were able to make it, even if you can't stay for the whole time. So very appreciative to that. And we were taking copious notes. I'm glad you'll continue to be part of this initiative. So what's up next, everybody, is we will have a breakout room.
Yes. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much. Hope that was fun. Hope it was stimulating. I'm sure it probably wasn't long enough, and it could go on. And this is really just the beginning. So yeah, please, I see some people already sharing in the chat. If you have some summaries, or if anybody took notes, please put them in the chat, and we'll capture those. And, our job is to synthesize all this great wisdom and knowledge that we're getting from folks into some actionable item, toolkit, resource. So we'll be doing that. So yeah, go ahead and put those in. And I'll just read what I see, and then we'll jump into the next presentation. So from Ruth, conflict with policies, government. So we're talking about limits. More permaculture people interfacing with those entities, yes. Time and distance constraints, online and virtual options to connect. Yeah, we need both of them. Innovation economy is capital driven, right? It doesn't seem to value this sort of work, even though there could be a whole green economy from this type of work, it seems to me. Challenges with connecting locally. Who's in your community, what skills? Yeah, community mapping, local historical disasters, knowing that information, gathering that information. Yep. Find patterns of connection and response. Yep. Beautiful. Antonio, define the types of catastrophic events that are likely to happen in specific locale. Yeah, we're very keen on the whole regional, bioregional thing here. And we have hubs with PINA, and that seems to be really important to know what you're going to have to face potentially. Forest management is imperative in areas subject to frequent fires. Absolutely. And somebody brought up earlier, the whole indigenous knowledge set needs to be incorporated into this permaculture knowledge set and the disaster knowledge set. So the controlled burns and that sort of thing is very important. Landscape refurbishment to be able to absorb large amounts of water in just a few hours in the case of major floods, storms over. Yes, absolutely. We need to share stories. Oh, I like that, Suzanne, about what's working. Use the language that brings the funding, green infrastructure, nature-based solutions, whatever they are, and co-partner with BIPOC groups doing the work. Absolutely. Zev, land access for low-wealth people. Yeah, getting more people back to the land, doing good work. Lack of sustainable economic drivers for people to do community organization and regenerative design work at scale we need. Yes, indeed. Trust damage. Lots of trust damage. Yeah, especially with a lot of our larger organizations. Yes. Top-down sort of control processes and flow of capital for these projects. Lack of responsiveness and risky financing. Yes, beautiful. Well, I see from Blake, restrictions, physical restrictions, no single set of best practices. That's something we're trying to come up with, various useful tools about best practices for certain regions. Did you try to say something, Zan? You might be muted. Or no? Okay. Responses, grow a community for support, teach underlying principles, find the opportunity in diversity of options. Yes, exactly. Oh, there's more and more. And guys, thank you. This is awesome. But just for keeping the town hall moving forward, let me just stop there and say thank you for all this. This is great. I look forward to reading these and summarizing these, or seeing a summary of these. So this is awesome. Great work, everybody. I appreciate you. Okay, we're going to be now moving on to introducing our next set of presentations. And again, this is sort of what have we been doing for the past 3 months with this Disaster Town Hall series? and then all the behind the scenes work. This is going to be sort of an update on that and an invitation to see how you might plug in. And so I'm going to introduce Corrine and Zan. And so specifically, I think Corrine Brennan is up for giving this sort of digest here, and Zan will do some sharing as well. But let me read Corrine's bio. So Corrine Brennan is a highly experienced permaculture designer and educator with a passion for food forestry, small farms, food security, and community building. She has taught permaculture design extensively in the United States and internationally. Corrine responded to the Haiti earthquake in 2010, organizing a permaculture team who used disaster design principles to integrate regenerative solutions into disaster response and recovery. She worked with others to expand these efforts and has continued to communicate the opportunities to rebuild human systems harmed by disaster in more regenerative ways. Corrine has a permaculture farm in Florida and is a PINA diplomate and board member, and she teaches permaculture design online and in person. So welcome, Corrine. And just a brief word about Zan. Zan kind of introduced herself, but I work with Zan quite closely, and there's not many people on earth that I know that have more skill sets than Zan. And so she's just going to be really talking about one of them today, which is her library history and organizing a lot of data into a meaningful repository. So Corrine, I'll hand it over to you, and thank you so much.
So hi, everybody. And so we're just going to talk about what we're doing, and just a little bit more background. For me, I got into disaster kind of thinking and activity when I was in Los Angeles, and I started working with volunteer organizations active in disaster, or VOAD, which also liaises with FEMA and other things after the Northridge earthquake. And that was kind of a mess because none of the organizations, that were churches and nonprofits and different, were working together, and nobody knew what the left hand was doing or the right hand. So after that, they started working more closely together, and now there's management teams from that FEMA helps organize and other things. So it's better, but it's a much more robust ecosystem now, this disaster response. It's also tends to be more nimble and responsive, especially with the nonprofit organizations and smaller groups, than anything else in society, which is business as usual, and we're going to do things the way we always have, and we're comfortable like this, etc. So it's an opportunity for change, and that's why I've continued to work in this area. So we got together, this team, and everybody has complementary resources, and it's really wonderful to work with the team. I can't tell you, because I've been kind of beating my head against the wall for many, many years by myself. So that question was very appropriate that Dan asked. So into the explanation, what will this project do? Well, we're picking, just going to go to the last thing here, outreach to leadership and organizations in disaster management related sectors, because they're more open to solutions. They're desperate for solutions, in fact, and this is only going to increase. They're more willing to listen. But what they're missing is the concept of whole system design, connecting their networks and creating a regenerative recovery solution and a regenerative prevention, preparation, mitigation, response solution as well. Those are the 5 pieces of disaster handling. So the first step is to educate on whole system design, to put together some basic materials on what this has to do with disaster management and why it will help disaster management be more effective. And then we're going to outline this, and this is all in a library and in manuals and different things. We're going to outline systemic issues, the challenges that we face, and there's different handling and solutions for each one of these. So, what are the risks here, and what are the challenges in these different areas: ecological damage, heat, flood, fire, and there's subcategories to them like pollution and depleted soils and all kinds of subcategories. And then we're compiling regenerative opportunities and resources to meet the challenges. And we all have them. We all know some of these, but they're not all in one place, where someone in California who wants to be more fire resilient can just go there and find the best practices vetted all in one place. So this is really needed. We need to make it easier for people to transition to a more regenerative, resilient culture on whatever echelon they're working on. So can we go to the next slide? Okay, so here's some unique, a lot of people are working on this. What makes our project different? Number one, we're putting whole systems principles, permaculture principles, into all of our solutions, multi-solving. So many problems are multifaceted at this point, like the fires in Los Angeles created many problems. In WNC, almost every aspect of society has been impacted in some way. So how do we find those leverage point solutions that we can put in that will solve multiple situations at once? We're vetting the material. We have some quality control of material. A lot of us have been doing this stuff for years. We know what works in our bioregion. We have connections. We have, there's also a lot of studies that have been done, et cetera. This isn't all in one place. We also want to make it readily accessible. So someone told me, well, you could just go on Facebook and search in these, adaptation groups and find solutions. Okay. But how about some keywords, and how about having one or multiple sites that are mirroring this information, pointing to it, so that it's all readily accessible and searchable and organized in a way that is maximally useful. Because who has time to go through Facebook groups or even the internet? The search engines are getting harder and harder to use, frankly. Group genius. People in this group are a bunch of geniuses, and we put our knowledge together, we're really going to have something incredible. And then multiple benefits to and from our contributors. We're permaculture designers. We can design this project so that people who do have the skill set can get consulting work out of what we're doing, or teaching, or whatever, whatever your occupation is or whatever your needs are. Let's design so that we maximally benefit the ecosystem for this project. It is community-based. It's community responsive. We can't do this without the community, and we want to make sure that it's maximally useful to you guys. So we're looking for design ideas for this, et cetera. There's two major documents that I'm working with. I'm doing a lot of the research and pulling things together, but that could use a lot of help. Yeah. So we have the library, which Suzanne is running and organizing, and that's where we're putting all the educational materials. We want to create some printable, very succinct manuals to give people a template that they can go in and do. And these are already available in many places, but I've started pulling, like hurricane response, I started with that. What are all the things that you can do to protect against a hurricane and respond to it? And then let's add some permaculture principles and permaculture techniques to that mix, So we're putting together manuals like that. We have a database that we started in Florida called We Regenerate Earth, which has regenerative services, products, and now we're adding regenerative disaster response solutions into that database. And that's going to be broadly available in any region. You can use it as a resource. We have an alpha version right now. We should have a beta by mid-February. And we want input. It's a nonprofit community-based project. How about a speakers bureau on this, which PINA could help facilitate and has been talking about. We can have webinars and town halls. We've talked about having hard copy libraries of some of the key books, which we're creating a list of, in different community centers and different neighborhoods, communities, bioregions, et cetera. So these are some of the ideas of how we can increase resilience on a more broad scale basis within our community to start with, because a lot of us don't really have these resources to hand, and we're all learning. So you know, within our community, within the disaster response community ecosystem, which is pretty robust, you know, but they need better solutions for recovery and mitigation. And then beyond those two sectors, if we want to. So I'm just going to stop there. Let Van go. We'll answer questions if you have them.
Thanks, Corrine.
Yeah. And so I don't think I have a lot to add to that. Corrine pretty much covered it. This is just another slide summarizing some aspects of this initiative. And so basically there's the community component and the resources is sort of how I divvy it up when I think about it. And these monthly town halls are a really important aspect of both community building, but also getting us to the resources and to the design. And goodbye to everybody who has to leave. I just saw something up there. And so these are not just meant to be informational, but also that community weaving piece. And there are various opportunities for those of you who are on this call and others to contribute. Did we show that slide, Corinne? Oh, and there it is. Okay, because I haven't come to it yet. So these are just some of the things we thought of. I thought of it off the top of my head, more or less, as I was adding things to our digital library. And so some of these are sort of library-ish focused, but there's plenty of other things. So, but we do want folks, and you're already doing this in the chat, and thank you. Those of you who are pointing out that bioregions are different, and we need to be slicing and dicing in that way as well. But looking at the categories that we're using, and let us know what we missed. Suggesting resources, as Corinne said, we have a form for that on PCX. Tagging, again, help us think about metadata and how we make this stuff as discoverable as possible. Summaries and abstracts of some of the longer educational resources that are available. Helping us to vet, because we have a long list of things and we want somebody to look at it and say, yeah, this should go into our library. And then actually entering things into the repository. Presenting at one of these town halls, or even serving as a provocateur if you have an idea. Here's a way we could kind of organize this and bring people together. Very open to that possibility. And of course, adding yourself and others to our asset map, to our database of folks who are experts in certain areas, folks who are connectors. So all of these things are ways that you can contribute. And I just wanted to end by showing you very briefly. So we keep talking about this digital library and kind of what it looks like. And hopefully you can all see this on your screen now, where it says the PC Depot at the top.
Yes.
This started life as something broader than disaster resiliency. It was a place where we put educational resources for people to teach and learn permaculture. And there are 3 or 4 things in there. But then disaster resiliency came along, and that's kind of taken over at the moment. So that's very much a priority. So you'll see we have some of the items that are in there. These are mostly links to external resources. However, we can also add materials like the guides that Corinne is developing, and people's own materials, if you're willing to make it available here with whatever copyright restrictions make sense to you. But most of these are links, and these are the things we talked about we need vetted. There's so many materials on the internet, and Corinne's got a huge list of things, and we'd love for somebody to look at them in more detail. So if you look at the collections we have so far, this is our main collection, Disaster Resiliency. There's a sub-collection on fire that we've started as well. And most of these items, many of them are related to North Carolina. As Lee said, that's where we've been starting, but we're slowly adding a few things. There's not a lot. There's about 65 items in here, I think, because I don't want to get ahead of the design. And again, that input and the community voice is so important to that before we really kind of settle on what a record looks like for one of these items, what a metadata record looks like. Um, and so, unless people have any questions or want to see something in particular, I think I can stop sharing my screen to move on. Oh, Francis, I see you have your hand up if you want to unmute.
Yeah. Just quick question, because thank you, Zan, for showing this. So when I saw this, the first thought I had was like, does PCX right now has like this idea about how we kind of do once we have built up a library, right? How to build outreach to the library? Because one of the things that when I see this is kind of like there's platform like Zenodo or preprints where scholarly articles are usually published.
Mhm.
And then what my immediate thought is because I'm a doctoral student right now, so it's top of mind being like, if people are researching and citing the information that we gather for the community, then that automatically breeds some more outreach. And I'm trying to find a way to link back to the resource library that we built.
I love that. And I think there will be a way to do that. We selected this platform because we can actually put the metadata out there. We can publicize it in various ways. I'm trying not to use like geeky library terms here, y'all. But it is fairly possible to connect to other resources. So it's likely that we can to the platform that you mentioned. But I'm also glad you're talking to us about outreach. That is something where that's an area where we could use volunteers and folks who want to work in that area. Kareem may have more to say about this.
Yes, volunteers are very useful especially if you have information. If you want to get involved in some capacity, we're totally happy to help. But we have a form that you can fill out for information, or you can send it directly to me in my contact I just posted. The stuff that should go into the database. We have a spreadsheet that we're collecting information with key people who are expert in a particular area or organizations that are doing regenerative work in the disaster field or related fields like forest management. There's a number of ways that you can participate and contribute. And if you have any design ideas or any ideas of how this could be more effective, we're all ears.
Absolutely. And I see Susan has her hand up. Susan, can you
Yeah,
unmute?
hi. Really exciting work. I'm curious if you have funding for this. There's just so much money out there for resiliency, and I'm curious if you've gone after grants for this work.
Not yet. We would love to have a grant writer fundraiser.
We have startup funding, and that is that I should have put that on the list, right? Yeah. And we're starting to see some of these opportunities, but anyone who wants to help out in that area, that would be so helpful.
Yeah, and I'll just shout out Gloria Flora, who was here. She's doing some grant research into this on behalf of PINA. So we're looking into it, but we haven't sort of reached out specifically as this initiative. But we do have an eye on it. And any more help on that, the better, I think. So thanks, Suzanne. That was great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Susan. That's a very good point. So I don't know, Jesse, if we want to do more questions or move on to our next breakout.
Let's do the breakout.
Okay, I'm going to stop my share. And thank you all so much for all this great work on limits. I can't wait to summarize all this and kind of feed that into the design hopper. So next breakout, we will move on to helps. So that's the next little node around the design web. So after talking about limits, then we talk about what's already out there. Are you copying that in? Thank you, Jesse. I saw you grabbed it. So here's the helps. what are resources, people, et cetera, that you or your community or communities already have or know of that can be part of this toolkit, can contribute to this toolkit. So this is more the asset piece of it. And thinking along those lines. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for being here, and to others I know who have to go. And so, Jesse, you can, or Corrine, talk a minute while I reform the breakout rooms.
Oh, yeah. You got to reform the breakout rooms.
Yeah.
So, the PCX, I put the link in there a few times. Just know that it's free. You can join. You can join the Town Hall space, which is going to have all the recordings, all the PDF slides as we gather them, the copies of the chat, the resources. And then there's a working group space. Bye, Francis. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. See you next time. The working group space is more like, cool, I want to add, I want to contribute, I have these skills and I've got energy for this right now, time and energy. And then that's pretty much it. Well, I'll put the link in at the end of this, but did that give you enough time, Zan?
That did. And Jesse, you're going to go in a room, but then I'm going to pull you back out if that's okay.
That's fine.
I was just so you know. All right, guys, off we go.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. So I hope that was a good breakout room for you all. And please, like before, share your summary in the chat and we'll gather those up. I'll read kind of what I can see as it's whizzing by. What came up around helps? What resources people in your community you already have or already know? The Spodek method? I don't know that. It can be a bridge to build the rest of your neighbors. Okay. After you come down from your PDC high. That's awesome, actually, because there's like that post-PDC blues sort of thing sometimes people get.
Yeah,
Cool.
Susan introduced us to the American Society of Adaptation Organizations, I think it was called, or I'd never heard of it before. I'm going to dive in a little more deeply on that.
Cool.
So I hadn't heard of that. And there's also Regeneration Pollination. The group that isn't solely focused on disaster resilience, but there's a lot of regenerators in that group.
Yeah, thanks for shouting them out.
And international.
Mm-hmm.
Well, someone put those links in if you can. And Greg said they talked about various services, including homelessness support. But a great point came up. We might need help from the unsheltered about how to navigate being unsheltered. That's a great point. Team Rubicon, Rhonda shared this. National level volunteer veteran, direct link to FEMA. Okay, cool. Veteran stuff. So, oh man, Rhonda's got all sorts of good stuff. Or her group did anyway. Wow, those are good. Societal for Ecological Restoration. I've not heard of that one. A bunch of toolkits too. That's amazing. Emotional arc of the PDC. Yeah, totally. Yes, this is being recorded. Permacultured food design. Yes, it's being recorded. We'll process it and put it up in a day or 2 or 3 on the link that I will share here in a second. Free. You can join the space up for free. I might as well show that real quick just so people know what they're looking for. I know it's another place to sign up and it's all that, right? But at the same time, if you want to hang out with a bunch of permies on a social media site that isn't run by capitalist agendas, but is run by permies and regenerative culture people, then you now have your spot. So the PCX, it looks like this. It's on Mighty Networks, the platform. These are called collections over here. So this is the Disaster Resiliency Initiative collection. And if you hit the little button, then you have the work group, which you can join. That's, again, if you want to dive in and be more active and share resources. You can really be as active as you want, as you've been probably hearing, right? You can jump right into the nitty gritty with us, or you can just share resources here or contribute as a presenter or volunteer as a presenter. We'd love to have you. And then somebody asked about the recording. That'll be put in this one, Disaster Resiliency Town Hall series. The calendar of events, that'll show the next one whenever we get it organized. And then in the feed is where the town hall will be. As you see here, we have Town Hall number 2 that you can check out, and Town Hall number 1 as well. Yep. Oh, nice. Thanks for the link, Gloria. That's great. Group number 1, assets and helps, drills and disaster preparedness on individual or small community scale. Yes, actually preparing and practicing preparing. Preparing even to the degree that just having a bug out bag, prevention at every level, communication is very, very important. what happens when cell towers go down, building allies at every level from homestead to regional. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Melanie says, I haven't come across many assets here. Preppers. Yeah, I think preppers are just waiting to be permaculturists, right? Because that's a deeper level of prepping and a deeper level of resilience. Oh, these are great. Thank you, guys. This chat is wonderful. Good resources, and like I say, we'll have these summarized. But without boring you and reading all of that, this is sort of the end of our town hall, I think. So let me put the links in, and Zan or Corrine or Lee, if anybody wants to say anything else about the nature of this event and the nature of what's coming next, please do.
Yeah, I would just like to encourage people to contact us if you have ideas, or, don't hesitate. Don't feel like we're going to strong arm you into more than you're willing to do. We're grateful for any participation. You will design it to what you feel interested in and called to do. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for organizing this. I feel much more sane for just having had this chance to talk about this with other people, because it's been in my head, it's been in book, it's been in snippets of conversation, but I'm really aware of how much emotion plays a role in my thinking of, am I prepared or not? I feel way more prepared already now than I did an hour ago. And I know that in some way that's not objectively true, but it also really makes clear to me that if I'm feeling connected to people, then I'm much likelier to have the energy to survive and just, have the willingness to go through the tough parts. So really, really appreciate your organizing this. It's not a fun subject, but this makes it feel like the problem is the solution. And I just wanted to give voice to the fact that emotion is a big part of this thing, and it's not what most people think about. I don't think it's on the FEMA website, but it is a really big part of it, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. I think we all agree with you here, and thanks for putting that into words for us. And that's a really nice note to end on, I think, too. So let's just end with a deep breath in and a deep breath out, and we'll let this go. So when you're ready, breathe in. Let the shoulders relax as you breathe out. Let the town hall go. And you get on with your weekend, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks, everybody.
Mhm.